up, everybody? This is Music in the Bottle podcast, and we are back, and we're stoked to talk with another Michigan winery that took home some hardware at the Michigan's first annual Governor's Cup competition. Next up, we got Michigan's most awarded winery and Michigan's Governor's Cup actual winner. So St. Julian Winery and Vice President of Winemaking, Nancie Oxley, welcome to Music in the Bottle podcast. How are you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me. Excited to talk to you guys tonight.
Yeah, we're happy to have you too. So before we get started in talking about some of the winning wines, let's talk about Nancie a little bit. So you've been in the industry for quite some time. This is your 23rd harvest, 22nd?
Harvest 22. So
Harvest.
I've been with St. for 21 years, and this is Harvest 22 with them.
All right. I love it. Well, yeah, let's just talk a little bit about your journey into and in the industry and how it's kind of been over the last 22 years.
Sure. So in college, I was a food science major in undergrad at Purdue University, and Purdue hosts the Indy International Wine Competition. And at that time, it was one of the top 3 largest in the United States. And my professor at the time, Dr. Richard Vine, which is actually his real name, he was a wine buyer for American Airlines, but also a professor at Purdue that taught all things wine related. And so I helped with the competition, got bit by the wine bug, went out to California, did an internship in Sonoma. And he said, you're going to love it or you're going to hate it, working those long hours. And you'll figure out whether you want to be in production or maybe on the other side of the wine industry. And I loved every minute of it. And once I was done out there, went back to Purdue, I graduated and happened to send my resume to St. Julian to appease my parents that I was actually looking for a job. And what my background was at the time kind of was a missing puzzle piece for the company, and I've been with the company ever since. So I've kind of grown up with the company, started right out of college and worked my way up through the ranks, and now running Harvest was one of the best teams I could ever imagine behind me, and I couldn't do what I do without all of them. It's definitely a team effort. So
Yeah, I love that.
we're producing all kinds of crazy wines there.
Yeah, so talking on the team, like how big is the St. Julian production team, or
we're actually small for what we do. We have 6 people in our cellar. We have myself as one of the winemakers, Kyle Totsky is our winemaker, and then we just recently promoted Kayla to assistant winemaker, and she also runs all of our lab analysis. And then we have 5 people in our bottling line, 2 guys in maintenance, and 3 guys in our warehouse. And so just shy of 20 people is our entire production team. So crushing over 4,000 tons of grapes with that few people, we get to work miracles every day at the winery.
I love it. So another thing, obviously you've been with St. Julian for pretty much quite some time. Let's just say that. But also, you are the first female winemaker in the state, correct?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. So coming from India, there were several females in the industry, as well as a 100% female-owned winery at the time when I was a college student. And when I first started at St. Julian, it was unbeknownst to me that I guess I was blazing a trail in a sense of being a female in Michigan. But there's still just a handful of us that are in the industry in top positions and are head winemakers running the harvest season for wineries. And we've had some women that have come and gone, but it seems like every year there are new ladies that decide to get their elbows dirty, and we all are we can hang and roll with the punches that the guys are dealing out. But it's an amazing industry to work in, and all of us, I think, are supportive, whether we're guys or gals. I mean, the wine industry is not like any other industry that anybody's ever worked in. We're all very supportive of each other. We're always there to lend a helping hand, and that's the one thing I love about it. So.
Yeah, I commend you. I got the chance to work harvest in California at Heights Cellar, and female winemaker there as well, and just kind of like a similar story. Like obviously you started, at the, the ground roots, or as they say, cellar at, so to say.
Yep.
And then you just make your way to where you are now. So just to see that, coming from females, and just the, the strength that you guys have to do what you do. And honestly, I will say I did harvest, and I don't plan on doing another one. Again, I definitely did not like getting my nails dirty. I definitely did not like the long hours like that. But it was great to obviously see that part of the business. You get to know like what goes into the bottle that, as a consumer, that we get to enjoy. And then as a front of the house person, or more so hospitality person, like I feel like I get to tell the story a little bit more in depth than someone that hadn't experienced harvest. So it was a great experience, but definitely kudos to you. Kudos to all the female winemakers. Kudos to all the winemakers. Kudos to all the production staff and teams, because you guys do some hard ass work. So kudos to you guys.
My crew works their butts off. It's been a minute since I've been that cellar at dragging hoses every day, but I've definitely been there.
You definitely put the time in, though. You put the time in, so now you're living. You're living the luxury, so to say.
I'm like, let me do it. I haven't done it in a minute. I want to do that. They're like, no, we got it. I'm like, wait a minute.
That's funny. So yes, we're here with the shout out to the Michigan Wine Collaborative. Shout out to Emily, who does so much for the industry, for the state of Michigan, for getting our wines put on notice and put on the map. But the wines that we have in front of us are winners of the Michigan Governor's Cup. You guys are no stranger to winning awards. But I'm just going to run through the wines that kind of won Best of Class, and literally over half of the Best of Class wines are St. Julian's. So that just kind of speaks to the production and the commitment that you guys put into the wines. But so Best Rosé, we have the non-vintage BFF Dry Rosé. We also have the Best Specialty Wine, which is the non-vintage Sweet Nancie Sparkling Peach. Best Hybrid Red, the 2020 Braganini Estate Reserve Petite Pearl. Excited to hear just about this hybrid grape in general. And then we also have the non-vintage Best Fortified, the Solera Cream Sherry. And then Best Vinifera Red, the 2020 Braganini Estate Reserve Cabernet Franc. So currently in my glass right now, I have the Dry Rosé. Let's talk a little bit about that one.
Yeah, Dry Rosé. So we make rosé in several different styles at St. Julian. We do a traditional bring the grapes in early, where they lend themselves to be a little more rosé friendly, which is what BFF is made from. We also do Saignée or free run that we pulled juice out of red. So this was specifically harvested early from Lemberger Blaufränkisch and pressed out, and it has a splash of Franc rosé in it as well. So we used to do a Braganini Reserve Blaufränkisch Rosé, and Blau, as we shorten it up at the winery, is not the easiest name to pronounce for the consumer.
Not at all.
As fun as our Braganini Reserve wines can be, they tend to be a little bit more serious in the sense for the more serious wine consumer, and not all wines have to be that way. And so having it be a little bit more difficult to say, and just being a dry rosé, which is fun to drink in the summer, we decided to change up the label a little bit. And so the BFF, so Blaufränkisch, so Blau Franc, and a little Franc in there. So BFF, and it's everybody's BFF during the summertime drinking rosé. So it's just a little fun that we like to have fun with, and our customers are absolutely loving it. So this wine we actually specifically made for our wine club members, and oftentimes our dry wine club members only get those Braganini Reserves. So when they get something that one of those non-reserve labels, they love having fun with it. So
no, that's cool. Yeah, I mean, I saw the label and I was like BFF, so like I know it, like we all know what that means, right? And then so the fun and play on words with it, like having that same meaning, but also meaning the grape varietals that are used in the wine. So cool. Yeah, like I said, this is a for me, definitely a very enjoyable rosé, still very fruit forward. Like I said, I think we run into this a lot in the industry where people, are coming from a sweeter palate and are looking to potentially, or it's my goal to, make sure they know what else is out there, whether that's traditional sweet wines done with intention, or whether it's this dry rosé that's, almost bone dry, but you're tasting a lot of that fruit. So you're getting still some of those fruity notes. So I think this is a fun kind of like transition from someone that's thinking that they're into sweet wines, but maybe they really just like fruit forward things. So this is awesome,
Yeah.
and I can see why it won. So cool.
There's a ton of fruit behind it, and it has a tinge of residual, but it's still considered a dry wine. But we kind of soften that acid out, that acid backbone, so it's not quite so austere. And sometimes when wines are a little too acidic, I call it gut rot, that it's not enjoyable, especially in a hot summer day after you have a glass. And by balancing that out a little bit, I think this one, we like to call it the porch pounder at the winery. It's so easy to drink it.
Yeah, super easy to drink. Touching on just again, we have this amazing lineup of wines here. But again, we live in a place where I guess Michigan has never really gotten the perception of taking wine serious. Obviously, we have some serious wines here. They've won serious awards. But I guess, what is your perception of like the industry, and where do you see like Michigan over the next few years, or how have you seen the progression like over your time in the industry? Hello?
Oh, are you there?
Yeah.
Technology at its finest. So I can kind of pick up. I think I know what you're talking about. So where do I see Michigan going? Where do we come from? Where are we going? What do I see the future?
Yep.
So when I started in the industry 20 years ago, we are so much different than where we are today. I think Michigan in general is a young industry. If you compare it to California, and even California, if you're comparing California to old world, the United States in general, our wine industry is young. But and I don't want to misconstrue that. I mean, they've been making wine. People have been making wine for hundreds of years here in the United States, but in our region, in Southwest Michigan especially, most of the wine was being made from Concords and Niagaras. And granted, we at St. Julian still make wine from Concords and Niagaras. That's a big part of our history. And so we continue to embrace that. But our growers are now growing Vinifera like they should. I think back in the early 90s, some of our growers, not just at St. Julian, but growers in Michigan in general, didn't know how to grow some of these varietals in our climate, nor were they put on the right sites. And over time, growers with wineries' help have dialed that in tremendously. And so now we're putting the best of Vinifera grape varietals on the best possible sites. And even with hybrids, I mean, hybrids have come a long way as well. I mean, I remember trying Vidals and Savals when I first started at St. Julian. And they were good wines back then, but what people are doing and winemakers are doing in our state to turn hybrid varietals into what they are today is even night and day. And that has to do with technology, experience, just from a growing aspect, but from a winery aspect too. And a lot of our growers we've been working with for over 20 plus years from multiple generations. And every year, I think we all get better at what we're doing, and we're trying to pass that information down to the next generation of growers as well as winemakers. And every single year, we're just getting better and better and better. And I think we're making wines on a world-class stage now. I mean, you can put any Michigan wine on a competition scene or up against wines from New York, Washington, Oregon, California, and we can definitely hold our own. And it's just, we keep waiting. And I think the same thing happened to Oregon and New York, even in Washington. Like everybody was talking about California wines. Now people are talking about West Coast in general. And New York's finally making a name for itself. And not that that's new to us in the wine world, but it's newer to the consumer. And, Michigan's right there. We're on the brink of that. And it's just a matter of time before the consumer knows our secret, in a sense, that we're making these amazing wines.
Yeah, it's I'm new to the industry as of 2020 when we started this podcast, really. And to my knowledge, and I knew my palate was just more so like a sweeter wine palate. So if I were to drink something, it was going to be, the sweeter Riesling or the Moscato. Like even when I went up north to Traverse City, which I think, this is circa 2018 that I probably went up there for the first time trying wines. And for the most part, even some of the menus up there were still, predominantly, had some sweeter things. There were some drier things, of course, but my time working at Modalis and just being in the industry, it's just kind of amazing to see the progression even in these last 3 years. And like I said, trying some of these wines and trying wines from up north or even, on this side of the state, the southwest side, it really is just a matter of time before I think everyone is just like, wow, that Riesling tastes like it's from Mosel. It tastes like it's, from Alsace. It tastes that Chardonnay really resembles Macon or, things like that. So it is really amazing to see, and I'm happy to be a part of it. And honestly, happy to showcase again some of these wines here. Let's
Yeah, the wines that won for St. Julian aren't ones that are in distribution, so most customers won't see them unless they're part of our wine club or if they come to the winery and come taste with us. So
okay,
they're small
so like this reserve line, like you guys just do this for a club or it's just available in the tasting room. It doesn't, because obviously as a consumer, and I think we see St. Julian on the shelves, but obviously it's not the reserve stuff. It's a little bit of everything else, but not the
when
special
people think
wines.
St. Julian, most people associate us with sweeter wines because that's what we have in distribution and that's what's out in the marketplace. And there are a lot of people that are drinking sweet wines, and that's why we continue to make them.
Yeah.
People have a tendency to talk dry but drink sweet. But we are in the Midwest, and people grew up on Kool-Aid and grape jelly and pop and all of that stuff. So it's, if people weren't purchasing those wines, we sure in heck wouldn't be making them, but they are. And I think everybody transitions from that sweet to dry over time. I too, when I started drinking wine, I remember the first time I drank dry red wine, and I couldn't believe people would ever drink it. That was the worst thing I could ever put in my mouth. But you don't have an appreciation for something like that unless you learn, and over time you do. And at St. Julian, we do the biggest of the big of these big batch distribution wines, but we will bottle 1 barrel of Cabernet Sauvignon for our wine club members if that's something that we see fit for them. And so we can do the big hustle, but we can also do these small artisanal, really hands-on, small batch wines that we put our heart and soul into, and that's what we showcased at the Governor's Cup. So we were excited to be able to share them with you guys, and we'd like to talk about them, so that's why we don't put them in distribution. Plus, we don't have enough, so our wine club members need to gobble them up before we would ever be able to get them out to distribution.
Right. Staying on the sweet train a little bit, let's talk a little bit about the wine that has your name on the label. Sweet Nancie Sparkling Peach. Tell us a little bit about the story behind that.
Yeah, so at the time when I became head winemaker, I was getting married, became head winemaker, and graduated from grad school. And the owner at the time, Dave Braganini, the late Dave Braganini, wanted to embrace the fact that I was the first female winemaker in Michigan. And he kept saying, let's make a wine and call it Sweet Nancie. And I said, what are you talking about? I make all the wines at St. Julian. He was like, no, let's make a Sweet Nancie wine. I'm like, yeah. And I kind of brushed it off for about 6 months. And he was like, we're making a wine and we're calling it Sweet Nancie, and you need to figure it out by the end of the month. I'm like, oh okay. And I love working with Traminette, being an Italian wine company, Michigan roots, Italian roots, Michigan soil. Traminette is very reminiscent of Muscat to me, and that's what Asti Spumante is made out of. And growing up as a kid, my parents weren't really big wine drinkers, but occasionally on the holiday, my sister and I would get, a splash of bubbly with Sprite so celebrate, mostly Sprite. Um, and it's just one of those things. Growing up, I always saw my parents having that on the holidays as a celebration, and we didn't have a sparkling wine that was sweeter in style like that in our portfolio at the time. So it just made sense to do that, and sweet, bubbly, and fun. And then all the fruit flavors kind of came to follow. So we have the original Sweet Nancie, which is sparkling Traminette, and then we have sparkling peach. Occasionally we'll have cran apple, we'll have cranberry, blueberry, raspberry, cherry. We've done all kinds of flavors of Sweet Nancie, but Sweet Nancie peach is one of the ones that has stuck around and seems to be a fan favorite. So.
Nice. We're gonna move. I'm just super curious about obviously all of these wines, and I love hearing your input on them. Obviously being a part of the process, but I want to jump to. I just cracked open the Petite Pearl, 2020 Braganini Reserve. Tell me why Petite Pearl. Like, what did you guys find in that grape that was just like, hey, like, let's do this.
So that was a bit of Dave Braganini driven, as well as Ron Nix, who was the grower of it.
Okay.
Ron was a huge Cabernet Franc grower for us for many, many years, and he had a plot next to the Cab Franc that he wanted to plant something different, and he did a lot of research on the Petite Pearl varietal. And it's a Minnesota hybrid varietal, so it can withstand temperatures down to negative 30 degrees. And with some of the polar vortexes that have kind of wreaked havoc on the Michigan fruit industry, it made sense for us to try something new and different. And we love working with new varietals at St. Julian. We actually have 54 varietals currently that we work with. And we're a little crazy, we know, but Petite Pearl is one of those. And in the vineyard, it looks a lot like Foch. They have really small, tight berry clusters that are on a top wire, top cordon. And they're early, so I was actually sampling them today. We'll probably harvest them next week. And it makes a beautiful wine, and it has so much acid behind it. It depends on the vintage. So 2020, the year, it was so darn hot. We didn't have any rain, and so the acid kind of fell out of it more so than a cooler year. And so we make Petite Pearl. We've made it in Rosé. We've made it a bone dry that we barrel age. Petite Pearl, we've actually blended it with Marquette. I was talking with a wine club member today that they love it. But this particular style, we do a semi-sweet Petite Pearl. And that's because of the acid in that particular vintage. And with a little bit of residual sugar behind it, it balances it out quite nicely. And it's a reserve wine that we can offer to our sweeter wine club members that still sees a little bit of barrel age to it, but we do an arrested fermentation, so the sweetness in there is natural of what the grape produces in the vineyard. And it's overall just, an easy drinking red wine, not a whole heck of a lot of tannin to it.
Yeah,
but that's the tendency of hybrids, that they don't really have a lot of tannin and harsh structure like some Vinifera can have. So
so you've obviously played around with this a little bit. You've done the bone dry. Obviously this is more the medium semi-sweet. I think, like I said, I have a glass of it right now. I have never had Petite Pearl to my knowledge. At least I don't remember, unless it was blended into something. But it's just kind of obviously cool to see the versatility. Obviously, so does that depend on vintage, whether you guys are going to go the sweeter route or the bone dry route and barrel age it? Is that all dependent on how the grapes come in?
Yeah, it depends on how the grapes come in, the vintage. Sometimes we'll do two different pickings depending on what the final destination will be. So if we know we're gonna barrel age them, we want to make sure some of the acid drops out of it. That will actually go through a malolactic fermentation. This one, we know we're going to have it be a little bit, sweet residual to it, so we handle it a little bit different in the winery to make sure that we capture that style. But it's a perfect versatile wine, if to put a little bit of a chill to it, especially in the hot summer days that we had. But it is really food friendly. I mean, if you're having any sort of like spicy vodka sauce, with penne or I don't know, there's all kinds of spicy red dishes that you can eat. It is a fun food friendly wine.
Yeah, it is super fun. Super fun. Thank you. I mean, thank you again for sending the wines. We look
Yeah,
forward to
absolutely.
enjoying these throughout the rest of the podcast, throughout the rest of the week for whatever's left, and to see how things hold up even days later.
Yeah.
Moving on to one that I was super excited to open. Again, when you see St. Julian wines, you see the sweeter stuff in the market or at my Meijer, at my Kroger, or Family Fare. But again, for the serious wine drinker, you do have Cabernet Franc as well, and some of these Vinifera varieties. Let's talk a little bit about the Cabernet Franc.
Yeah, the Governor Cup winner. Cabernet Franc is so versatile in Michigan, but I think it's a varietal that we do really well throughout the state. I know at some point there was some discussion about, if we have a state grape, maybe this should be one. And I know Riesling pops up and all kinds of different things too. But we grow it down in Southwest, and I know they grow a bunch of it up in Northwest. And from this vintage, it just all came together so nicely. We age it in French oak barrels, about I want to say about 40% new oak. So
Okay.
there's definitely some structure and wood
Mm-hmm.
behind it, but it doesn't overpower the actual fruit. You can taste that Cabernet Franc grape.
Yeah.
Super ripe, that vintage. One of the ripest vintages that we've ever had. So you get some really nice lushness on the palate, and but yet it has some guts to it as well.
Yeah, I honestly say the same thing. You mentioned how, what is the Michigan grape or like what grows well. Like I always tell people, I think Cabernet Franc is just the grape. It's obviously not as like climates like needy as its child grape Cab Sauv. So it just works well. Like here, like in the Midwest, obviously Virginia's doing Cabernet Franc, New York's doing great Cabernet Franc. I just think it's a grape that like thrives. Like like it gets to the ripeness levels here in the state, which makes it, like I said, like if Riesling is the king white grape or queen white grape and Cabernet Franc is the king red grape. Um, it's I tell people that all the time too. I'm like, I think if you're looking for Michigan Reds, you should try Cabernet Franc because I think there's people all across the state that are growing great Cabernet Franc, and this one
I agree.
is no
It's a good
different.
one. I have a few other favorites as well, but
Yeah, the Cab Franc
Cabernet,
is fun.
Cabernet Franc does really well, and even in some of the cooler years where you get a little bit of that green bell pepper,
Mm-hmm.
um, you know, sometimes you get little tinges or hints of that. I think sometimes here, especially in a cool climate, I don't want to say it's expected, but it's a little more accepted in a sense. I mean, I wouldn't want to drink a Cabernet Sauvignon that tasted like bell pepper, but with Cab Franc, it almost adds to the complexity of the wine in cooler vintages.
Yeah, no, 100%. 100%. So I got, again, since we're here with the Michigan Governor's Cup wines, it's in its first year. I mean, I, again, work from Modalis doing the marketing. So when we got the results back from, our Sauvignon Blanc and some of the other wines we submitted, it was just like, oh, wow, that was cool. Best of class, really? All right, we'll take it. um, but obviously, this competition is in its first year. I think it got a late push of like, all right, let's promote these wines. But I think it's just going to get better like with years to come. But has I guess have you noticed I guess any like initial boost, or have you like heard around the tasting room, or are people asking about these wines, or like, hey, like, can I get that, or like have you
Yeah,
seen
we
any
most definitely
spike?
communicate that to especially to our wine club members.
Yeah.
So we put it in our newsletter that goes out to all of our followers, and we put out our own press release for it. And I think it's nice to have that Michigan wine competition back. We had one for so many years, and we've tried different formats the last few times, and hopefully the Michigan Wine Collaborative has found one that works for them, that we can still highlight Michigan wines and continue to move forward with it. And it would be nice, to have, I don't know if we need necessarily an awards ceremony, but the old format where we had a walk around that the consumers could purchase tickets and we taste all of the wines from the wine competition in one area. That's such a unique event that the state can hold to highlight all Michigan wines, not just, everybody goes wine tastings and you winery hop to winery to winery to winery, but to be able to host an event that is supported by the Michigan Wine Collaborative, that you can taste all of the wines submitted, or all the winners, whether it's, everybody that got a medal, or I can't remember how they used to do it back in the day, but it was such a fun event. So I'm hoping that we can push towards that in the future and be able to get together as an industry. And like I said before, everybody supports each other so much in so many different ways, and hopefully we can get back to that. So.
Yeah, I think this is something that I do hope sticks as well. I said in another article with the Michigan Wine Collaborative, it really does take a village. It does take this the support of the whole industry. Like if we continue to support each other, the better our wines are gonna be showcased to buyers, to the Soms of the world, to the consumer in general. So it takes all of us to show that, hey, we are making some really serious wines. And if you don't want to be serious, we have some wines that are for that too. So we do have a little bit of everything. You touched on harvest before we started the actual podcast, but you're kind of in the midst of everything now, and this is year 22. Give me one word to describe harvest.
Organized chaos. I just got 2 words, sorry.
That's all right. We'll take it. I again, the harvest I worked in California, it was just amazing to see how something would happen and you just adjust to whatever it was. Obviously the grapes still have to be processed, whether something breaks or whether somebody doesn't show up. Things have to get done. So I totally get it.
A lot of adaptation, roll with the punches, changes on the fly. But
I love it. Well, honestly, thank you so much. We do have one last wine. I just want you to briefly just give us an insight of the non-vintage Solera cream sherry, because there's not really a lot of people doing sherry, let alone here in the state of Michigan. Honestly, this might be the first one that I've ever seen.
So Solera cream sherry is the most awarded wine in Michigan, but the Solera has been around since 1973. That's when we started our Solera system at the winery. So I'm the 3rd winemaker that the torch has been passed to continue the tradition of how we make sherry. And we do it just like they do in Spain, and we've been making it that way for over 40 years. 50 years this year. So Solera, 50 years ago, we started a Solera system. But it's an absolute classic. Again, we make it the same way year after year. So there's still some wine back from 1973 that's part of that system, because we don't fully rack it, bottle everything, and it's a 3-tier system. And being a cream sherry, it's sweeter in style, but it's a beautiful wine for desserts. I oftentimes will do a lot of cooking with it. If you like chicken marsala, it's a great wine to use for chicken marsala. But Jancis Robinson, who most wine people know, that they do everything with wine critics, said it's the best sherry that she's ever had outside of Spain, and she said that several years ago. So we like to hang our hat on that. And
yeah, that's awesome.
We'll continue making it. So
Jancis is the real deal.
Yeah.
So if she says she likes it, then that's legit. Well, thank you so much, Nancie. Like I said, I don't want to keep you too late. I know you got to get back to business tomorrow morning. But looking ahead, are there any exciting events or wines our listeners should be looking out for, especially with this upcoming harvest underway? And lastly, I guess, what can people expect if they make a trip to one of the 6 St. Julian tasting rooms?
6. Yeah,
All right.
absolutely. Yeah, harvest is in full swing. We always have something new and different up our sleeve, whether it's a new winemaking technique, a new vessel, a new a blend, a new style. We're always constantly experimenting out in the vineyard as well as in the winery. Um, we have a humongous wine club. We have over 18,000 members that we
Nice.
create 15 to 18 new wines every single quarter for them. So we definitely have new and different things always coming. We're a distillery as well. We're Michigan's oldest craft distillery. So if you're into bourbons, I know this is a wine thread, but if you're into bourbon, we're now making 100% Michigan grown, Michigan made bourbon at St. Julian, as well as other spirits that we've made for many, many years. Um, and gosh, if you come to the winery, all of our tasting rooms kind of have the same vibe that when you walk in the door, you're going to know that you're at a St. Julian tasting room. But each one has their own personality, and our staff members love to make new cocktails and make new creations, and they have different tasting menus at each location. So you'll be at St. Julian, and there'll be the same wines there, but you'll have a different experience in each one that you walk into. So we recommend coming and traveling the state and visiting us at each one.
I love it. And again, this is St. Julian Winery. This is Nancie Oxley, the vice president of winemaking at St. Julian. She is in her 22nd harvest this year. If you happen to be in the tasting room or you happen to be in Pawpaw, wherever, if you see her, just give her a big salute because they are doing some great things over at St. Julian. Thank you again for hopping on Music in the Bottle podcast. Thank you so much for sharing these wines. Thank you to the Michigan Wine Collaborative and Emily for getting us squared away with this. This is Music in the Bottle podcast.
Emily and Gina are the best at the Michigan Wine Collaborative, so we love them.
Shout out Gina too.
I love talking about wine, so thank you for having us on your podcast.
Yes, thank you.